Have you ever been in the middle of a perfectly planned vacation, hotel booked, restaurants reserved, every hour accounted for, and felt, underneath all of it, quietly suffocated? Like the trip was happening to you instead of for you. Like you were executing a plan instead of actually living something. If you felt that, even once, you know exactly how specific and hard to explain that feeling is. And most people just chalk it up to stress or exhaustion. But it's not that. It's something in your wiring. Something about the way your brain actually experiences freedom that makes rigid structure feel less like safety and more like a cage. Psychologists who study what's called exploratory behavior have found that for certain personality types, open-ended environments don't cause anxiety, they reduce it. Picture someone opening a flight app on a Sunday night. They are not looking at resort packages or curated itineraries. They are scanning destinations the way someone else might look at a menu, not sure yet, just curious what is there. They book the ticket. Hotel? They will figure it out when they land. Activities? They will see how they feel in the morning. To most people watching, this looks like recklessness. To them, it feels like relief. This is not a personality quirk or a travel aesthetic. It reflects a specific psychological orientation, a genuinely different relationship with uncertainty itself. Psychologists have a term for this: tolerance of ambiguity. First studied by psychologist Else Frenkel-Brunswik, it describes how much unresolved uncertainty a person can hold before their threat detection system activates. Most people experience open-endedness as a low-grade alarm. Their nervous system reads no plan as no safety. These people experience the same open-endedness as an open door. That difference is not minor, and it explains nearly everything else about how they travel. When most people plan a trip obsessively, reviews checked, spreadsheets built, every hour accounted for, the plan is not just logistics. The plan is protection. If something is already decided, it cannot go wrong in the worst way. The itinerary is a written answer to the question, what if something unexpected happens? The solo traveler with no itinerary is not unaware of that question. They have simply built a different internal answer to it. Psychologists who study emotional regulation describe this as a high ambiguity threshold, the point at which uncertainty becomes genuinely distressing. For these people, that threshold is set unusually high. Vague situations, open schedules, unresolved plans do not register as threats the way they do for others. This shows up well outside of airports. They are also the person who can sit with a project at work that has no clear direction yet without spiraling. They can end a conversation that did not reach a resolution and not replay it all night. They are not unaffected by uncertainty. They simply do not collapse inside it. The unplanned trip is just where this trait becomes most visible. There is something deeper than ambiguity, tolerance powering all of this. Edward Bandura, one of the most widely cited psychologists of the 20th century, called it self-efficacy. Not confidence in a broad sense, but a specific internal belief. I have handled difficult situations before, and I can handle what comes up next. This is built from experience. Bandura called the building blocks mastery experiences, small moments across a lifetime where the person faced something uncertain or difficult, and it worked out. They got lost. They figured it out. They missed a bus. They found another. They sat alone at a restaurant in a city where they did not speak the language, ordered by pointing at something, and the meal came. They were fine. That track record becomes internal evidence, and internal evidence is more durable than an itinerary. The itinerary is externalized control. Self-efficacy is internalized control. These travelers have already answered the what-if question inside themselves, which is why they do not need to write it down before they leave. Here is the part that confuses people around them. Ask one of these solo travelers to join a group trip, one with a shared Google Doc, an hourly schedule, and a group chat running daily polls about dinner, and something in them quietly resists. It is not that they dislike the people. It is not quite selfishness either. It is a friction that is difficult to name. Self-determination theory developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, identifies autonomy as one of 3 core psychological needs, alongside competence and connection. For some people, autonomy is the most active of the 3. When that need goes unmet, the experience feels off in a way that is hard to articulate. Someone else's plan, even a good one, does not fit the shape of how they process the world. The group chat debating Museum A versus Museum B at 11 a.m. is not just a minor inconvenience. It is, for this person, a small but real experience of losing access to their own internal signal. And their internal signal is the whole point of the trip. There is a neuroscience piece here that most people miss entirely. When the brain is not executing tasks, not checking off a list, not navigating to the next planned stop, a network called the default mode network activates. This is the brain's introspective system. Research on this network links it to memory consolidation, creative thinking, emotional processing, and something psychologists describe as narrative self-understanding, the ongoing sense of who you are and what your life means to you. Modern life almost never leaves this network room to run. A full inbox, a packed calendar, a structured vacation itinerary, all of it keeps the brain in execution mode. The unplanned afternoon in a foreign city, the hour sitting in a cafe watching people pass, the walk with no destination. These are, neurologically, some of the only conditions in which the default mode network runs without interruption. The solo traveler wandering without a plan is not wasting time. They are doing something their daily life almost never allows. This profile has real gifts, but it carries a cost that tends to travel quietly in the background. The first is practical. These people can be genuinely difficult to travel with, not because they are unkind, because the thing that makes solo travel feel right, the absence of external structure, the freedom to follow their own rhythm, disappears the moment another person is involved. They can adapt, but something is always slightly off and they usually know it, and sometimes the other person eventually knows it too. The second cost is subtler. Solitude that restores is a real psychological resource, but solitude that restores can expand, over years, into solitude that insulates. The same comfort with being alone that makes an unplanned trip feel like freedom can slowly make intimacy feel like intrusion. Not dramatically, just quietly, across time. This is not a wound. It is a skill that has sometimes grown past the container that shaped it. The difference between those two things is worth paying attention to. This is not wanderlust. It is not an aesthetic for people who want the cobblestone street photo. It is a specific psychological profile, high tolerance for ambiguity, strong internal self-efficacy, a genuinely active need for autonomy, and a nervous system that does some of its clearest thinking when nothing is scheduled and nobody is waiting. The unplanned trip is not chaos to them. It is clarity. The empty afternoon in a foreign city is not a failed day. It is often the only kind of day where they can actually hear themselves, without the inbox, without the group chat, without the next obligation already loading. The question worth sitting with is not whether this is healthy or broken. For most people in this profile, it is neither. The more honest question is whether they know the difference between solitude that restores them and solitude that slowly closes them off. Those two things can look identical from the outside, and sometimes from the inside too. Only they know which one they are currently in, and whether the answer has recently started to change.